Welcome to another episode of the Peak Potential Success Show. My name is Fong. I'm an entrepreneur, business strategist, real estate investor, speaker, and also a best-selling author. And every single day, I help others unlock potentials and guide them to succeed. Today, I have another amazing individual. This guy is absolutely phenomenal when it comes to multifamily investments and also real estate. He, in a very short period of time of less than 3 years, he has become a general partner in over $100 million worth of assets and properties. And he absolutely loves helping other people become very successful in real estate and also building wealth. He is a multifamily investor. He is an entrepreneur. He is also the show host of the show called Bulletproof Multifamily Mindset Show and also Bulletproof Cash Flow. So please welcome real estate investor, syndicator, entrepreneur, Mr. Agostino Pintus.
Fong, thank you so much, man. Thank you so much for that intro. It's awesome. I'm very happy to be here. Man, I'm excited. I'm excited for life, man. Wasn't always like this, I'll tell you that. But nowadays, yes, very excited. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, thank you very much for being here. And just before we started recording this, I found it was pretty funny. I'm like, so how's it going? And he's like, oh, I just, we have a 212, just only a 212 unit building almost closing or finished closing. And I'm like, oh yeah, just 212. Lots of people here are something like, oh, I wish I could just get one unit. But for you, 200, 300, whatever it is, those are stuff that you do day in, day out, something that you're really good at. So share with us that journey from where you were before to where you are now. How did you get to where you are?
Sure. Well, it's funny because it wasn't that long ago when a lender friend of mine said I ought to be looking at $8 million deals, and my head started spinning. I'm like, how the hell am I going to do that? How do I even do that thing, right? And now it's like 8 million is nothing. Yeah, that's a small rate. That's baby money. It still sounds a little weird when you say it out loud. It does, I will admit. But it has to do a lot with building that abundance mindset, which is an actual prerequisite to seeing the success that many people out there probably listen to this right now that want to visualize and see that's prerequisite. You got to have that mindset. But I'll tell you a little bit about my background. So I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. From when I was a kid, growing up in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. I grew up to some immigrants, Italian immigrants. And when I was a young kid, I was always gravitating towards computers, right? So I wanted to be a tech kid, right? So back then, computers were just starting to come out in grade schools, right? So I was coding, I was writing code at like 9 or 10 years old. I'd be sitting in the library just coding, and I wanted to be a computer guy. That's what I wanted to do, right? My whole life, it's all I wanted to be is working computers. And but I want to be also an entrepreneur, right? But growing up to immigrants, my parents were like, no, you don't want to be an entrepreneur. You want to get a job. A job is security. You have your money that comes in every month. You don't need to be working for anybody. You don't need to be working for yourself. Rather, that's too risky, right? Mm-hmm. Of which, I think I would argue that's way riskier to work for someone else than not working for yourself. But anyway, but I went down that path. I decided that I was going to go do what they told me to do, right? So I went to school, did my undergrad in engineering, technology. Then I went on to do a master's degree, 2 master's degrees. Ooh. As I'm doing all this, I'm working my way up the corporate ladder. Eventually, I'm running large enterprise IT. A lot of failures in the meantime. I worked for a lot of crappy companies. I think I was telling you in the green room that I started counting how many jobs I've been fired from, and I've been fired from 13 jobs. And I stopped counting. Man, because I lost count. I couldn't remember all the jobs that I had.
Did you just start having this bulletin board where you start hanging your name cards like in an award?
Oh no. Hey, I'll tell you. After the most recent thing when I got rejected from another company recently, I was sending out probably about 100 resumes a day. Ooh. Every single day, even if they weren't looking for a CIO. Chances are someone in your audience has got my resume, right? Someone out there has got it, right? It's pretty sad. But But now we're going back like 16, 17 years now. I was a young executive and flush with cash. We were in the asset management business. We just gone public and I had some extra cash. So I decided, because a friend of mine told me to, buy houses. So I started buying like single families, small multifamilies, started doing that. But here's the thing though, here's the first problem. My mindset 17 years ago was, if I can buy enough of these single families, if something happens to me at this job, I'll have enough income coming in to cover my expenses. That is like number one, scarcity mindset, right? Scarcity mindset. So instead of thinking like, hey, I can buy buildings, I can buy all this other stuff, big deals. I was worried about covering my own nut, as opposed to thinking big, right? But I look back now and I see it as a problem. I didn't realize it was a problem when I was going through it. And mind you, I was doing a great job. I thought I was doing a great job for this company. I was creating technology that no one had ever seen in the industry. Like it was unheard of, the things that we were putting together. And, then everything was going fine until one day it wasn't. And the company decides they're going to, quote, make a change. And at the C level, it happens a lot, especially in technology. And because as soon as you hit the C level, which is CIO, CTO, whatever is what I mean by C level, you have a big target on your back. And I had that target and I got taken out, right? They handed my box, pack up your stuff, get lost, you're gone. So here I am out of a job. I was in my 30s at the time. And, it's like, okay, great. What am I going to do now? And here's the thing, like many people out there, right, that don't live with focus or don't live with purpose. You start floating from job to job to job. You're living minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day. And I think there's even a saying, live one day at a time, which is a load of crap, if you ask me, right? It's garbage. You don't live one day at a time. You live with a vision, and you're pulling that vision forward to today is what you're doing, as opposed to just, quote, living, right? But that's how I was doing it. And by taking that approach, instead of governing where you're going, which is what I should have been doing, I was just desperate for any type of job, any type of income. Desperate, because I was mentally defining myself by my job. My job is who I am. And it's totally not true. Totally not true. Many people out there think the same way, by the way. They think that their job is who they are. And that's not the case at all. At any rate, I go from job to job to job. And that, of course, adds to that was it 13, 15, because every time I started a new place, I wouldn't last very long because it was a crappy company. Most of the times I ended up working at a crappy company. More often than not. I just wasn't a good fit. But then eventually, all that led me down my 10 dark years. Like I was going from job to job. I had no purpose, no why, just trying to take on any type of thing I could find. It's because I put myself in a very bad place mentally. And finally, I decided I was going to really hunker down, really focus on what I needed to do, and really change my life. So what I started doing was really boning back up on the latest technology again, and ended up landing at a company in New York City. And then from there, meeting somebody who's another New Yorker that asked me to come on board as a C-level executive at his company in Indianapolis. It's like about 10 years later after getting fired from this place in Virginia. And of course, everything was going great. I was working there for a couple of years. And the one thing I remember from that is that I was getting paid gobs of money, like insane amount of money, right? And when you get paid, by like it almost doesn't matter how much you're getting paid, but I was getting paid a lot. It's almost like a drug, right? It's almost like heroin, right? And that shot's coming in 2 weeks. Should I really go after that deal? You know what? I don't have to go after that deal. I got another check coming right behind this one. It's okay.
You have another lazy.
Yeah. Get lazy. And I got lazy. I got lazy. I should have been doing deals. I should have been chasing down real estate. I should have been learning the business, right? I didn't know any better, right? I should have been buying more. At the time, I was still in single family mode, right? But I hadn't bought anything in a long time because I went through those 10 dark years. But fast forward a couple of years after starting at that company, I fixed that company up. It was a complete disaster. I fixed it. New guy, the old guy quits. New guy, new CEO comes in. Guess what? Oh, guess who's got the target on his back? Yours truly. I'm out again, right? And then this is when it comes to a realization. And I'm like, here I am in my 40s now. How many more times am I going to allow someone else to control my life? Mm-hmm. How many more times am I going to put myself in a situation that puts me and my family at risk? How many more times am I going to allow someone else to control my career and more importantly, define my potential? How many more times can I allow this to happen? And like anything else in life, everything is driven by a decision. You have to make a decision, right? So, and I made that decision. I was like, you know what? I'm not doing this anymore, right? I am not going to allow anybody else to control my future, right? So I said that I would do one more consulting gig, right? Because I needed to get some kindling for what I was going to do next. But I was never going to do this 9 to 5, 40-hour nonsense ever again. And I was never going to do it again. And 40 hours is being light. I was in IT, you're usually working more like 60, 80 hours a week. It's never 40. It's never 40 hours, right? So what I started doing was selling off all my stuff, all my single family. So I was selling everything because I needed some dry powder. I went to Michigan, started selling some stuff off, went to Virginia, started selling, I had some stuff there from the job I had of 13, 14, whatever, 16 years ago. And, but then I was introduced to syndication. That's when the light bulb went off. And I just happened to be sitting in my car, I was talking to an attorney friend of mine, and I look outside and I see this building. It was like a 30-unit building. And I said, hey, who owns that? Like, who owns these buildings I see around here? He goes, what do you mean? People own them. I go, what people? He goes, individuals. They syndicate these deals. I'm like, oh, what's that? And he explains syndication, which is basically using other people's money. You raise money from these other people. You use that as the down payment, as equity in the deal. You get the debt. And then what do? You give them a return. They're happy. You're happy. Yeah, and it's a great deal. It's a win-win-win for everybody. And I'm like, I could do that. That is something I can do, right? I can raise money because I learned all that in corporate. I learned how to speak to people in corporate. I learned how to run large projects in corporate. I know people in corporate. I can do this. So I said, you know what? That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to my roots in real estate. And I chose Cleveland, Ohio as the place to be because I noticed that when I started doing my market studies, like where I was going to go next. Because I remember I had this job I just rolled off of. I had some savings from that I got from this company as well. Like, if you want to call it, like, I'm not going to call it a severance package, but more like they just paid me out for the rest of the month, for the rest of like a few months or whatever. And I sold off some of these properties, so I had a little bit of cash. Where was it going to go? I chose Cleveland, Ohio, as the place because it's still. I noticed that the economics were still making sense here at the time. And that's what I did. I loaded up everything I owned in my car and drove here, right? I had no soul, right? Took up a consulting role for some crappy little IT company and started getting to work building this business, right? And learning who the brokers were, who the property managers were, who the construction people were, who the inspectors were, like trying to get a lay of the land. Went to several meetups, got to learn who the movers and shakers were in the business. And that's, I'd say that was probably about 3.5 years ago when all that started, right?
Wow.
Now, fast forward to today, as you pointed out, well over $100 million worth of deal flow we've done now. We bought the Rockefeller building in downtown Cleveland. That deal alone is going to be $135 million when it's completed. That's just when it's completed. That's not the valuation. That's just the project cost. The valuation of the asset really takes place once it starts cash flowing. Mm-hmm. NOI is what defines the value of a property, right? Now, how much you spend on it, two different things, right? Yep. Then, of course, we're doing ground up development now too, so doing a ground up development here in Cleveland as well. And we have another one coming right behind that one, another 100 units right behind that. So it's like, it was not easy. It took a great deal of of really commitment to learn the business, to learn the area, to learn who the movers and shakers were, to spend a great deal of time getting to know the people. But more importantly than anything else, aside from the mindset that I mentioned before, that abundance mindset instead of scarcity, which is what I was thinking before, I was always in terms of scarcity. Now I think in terms of abundance. You know, how big can I get these deals? How much more can I get out there? How many lives can I impact? That's what I think about today. Aside from that, I was also thinking about how big can I get this thing? How much more potential do I have inside me to keep this thing going? You know, it's a whole different mindset from how I used to live, right? Whole different mindset, and it's certainly been a whirlwind. It's still fun for me. I still enjoy what I do. Some days are crazy, some days are stupid. Some days are fun, but it takes a high degree of tenacity. But the most important thing, though, is to make a decision. You know, I think that there's many people I speak to that they hear about what I do, they hear about the journey, and they're like, "Hey, I want to do that." I'm like, "Yeah, but do you really though? Like, are you really prepared to just like abandon everything and live in your car for a while? I mean, are you really prepared to do that?" I mean, when I tell people I did that happened to me, right? I started with I had a little bit of cash. I took all that cash and threw it all in a deal, all of it. My first deal, I did all of it on my own, right? All of it, right? I didn't raise money for my very, very, I guess you want to call it my rebooted life deal. I used my own. That's like, are you really prepared to go through that heartache? Are you really prepared for that? That's the key. Like, are you really? That's the biggest question. Are you ready to sacrifice? And I find that if they're not ready to sacrifice, then it's going to be very difficult to make it to that vision that they have. You know?
Right.
So that's the thing. You know.
So you mentioned before, okay, your very first deal. What was that like? The real estate 1.0. The very first property you bought.
Yeah.
What was the challenging aspect of actually buying it?
Yeah.
And then how different was that from the challenge of buying your next first big one, the 2.0?
Oh my God, man. I'll tell you what, this is hilarious. You're going to love this one. So when I was working in corporate, like so we're talking again, 16 years ago, and it's funny because I was at the time when I first moved from Michigan to Virginia, I was renting. Right? I was renting an apartment because when you first move somewhere and you take a corporate job or whatever, you're not going to go out and immediately buy a house. You're going to rent somewhere, get to learn what's going on, make sure the job's okay, and then you go ahead and you commit to buying a house. That's what we're told, air quotes here, what we're told to do. Buying a house is stupid, by the way, unless you're renting it out. Okay, for the record. That's a whole other discussion, right? Buying a house is stupid. I told someone that just the other day, and I'm like, buying a house is dumb. You should never buy a house. This young person, they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, it's stupid. You should invest in cash flowing assets, not invest in a house. A house doesn't cash flow, but that's a whole other discussion. Anyway, so I did have a condo that I was renting out to like my brother-in-law, whatever, right? But so technically I was already a landlord, but I didn't really think of it like that, you know? So anyway, 16, 17 years ago, my friend tells me, my coworkers, I'm like, okay, so he connects me with this real estate broker, like a regular old broker, right? And she convinces me to buy this house. And there's a house in Virginia. It was a small middle class house, nothing special about it really. This is back before 2008. It's going back a while, right?
Yeah.
And I paid like retail for it. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing. I paid retail for this house, right? And in my mind, it's like, well, I didn't really care. As long as I'm making my spread, what do I care? You know, back then I was making that much money. It didn't even matter to me, you know, which again was stupid, right? But I remember when I closed that house, I was at the closing table, I closed it. Then, so I was like, okay, great. So I own this house. What do I do? Here's your keys. Like they give me the keys. I'm like, okay. So I go to the house. I don't know what else to do. So I remember getting to the house. I was in the living room, staring outside the living room, and I'm like, oh my God, what did I just do? I just bought this house. I can't imagine that. Oh my God, what did I just do? What did I just do? I'm crazy. What am I doing here? Is someone actually going to pay me to live here? This is stupid. What am I doing? Oh my God. I started freaking out. I swear to God, I started freaking out in my very first house that I bought like that. And then, what did I do? I put it up on Craigslist or something like that. Craigslist was the place to go at the time. Rented it out in like 3 days.
Wow.
I'm like, oh my God. And then they sent me money. Holy crap, they sent me money. I can't believe this. This really works. Oh my God. So I did another one. And then I did something really stupid though. The third one was really dumb. I bought a duplex for $400,000. That was dumb.
Mm-hmm.
That was totally dumb. It was a very nice neighborhood, right? But it was totally stupid. You used hard money to buy it. I mean, it was every mistake that I could possibly make. And I was still new. Like I was trying to buy as much stuff as I possibly could. I was going on a tear. And this is just before, like this is probably like 2006 when the market was starting to heat up overall. Like the market now is crazy. It was kind of like that. But in 2008, for those people that aren't aware, the prices of houses would move so fast. They would literally move on a day-to-day basis, day to day. A house that was once valued for $90,000, the very next day would be 95. And the very next day from that, it'd be 96, 98, 100. I mean, it was just jumping like that crazy. And I had certain rules when I was buying that kind of stuff back then was if I couldn't put permanent financing on it and cash flow it on a 30-year loan, I would and had to have the cash flow. If I couldn't cash flow it, I wasn't buying it. So that rule saved my life, that right there, because other friends I know, they did not follow that rule and they went over their ski tips. And next thing you know, the bank calls all their loan and takes away all their property. They have to go bankrupt. It was a disaster. So I was one of the cases that did not go bankrupt. I could have went bankrupt, but I didn't. And because of the way that I financed it, so for a guy who didn't know what the hell was going on, I did okay. But I'll tell you what, those first deals I was scared to death, man. I was scared to death. And now it's like, I literally just closed this 212 unit deal. I'm like, yeah, I just closed on this thing. And it's like, I already forgot about it. I'm already working on the next one. It's like, I'm trying to, and now it's like, I'm trying to figure out how to build a high rise in downtown Cleveland. That deal would probably be like $100 million deal, easily $100 million, probably more than that.
So just going back a little bit, you said that duplex was completely stupid.
Yeah.
So what were the main factors that made it a very stupid decision?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's all about cash flow, right? It's all about cash flow and yield per unit, right? Mm-hmm. And at the time when I bought it, the one unit was kicking out about $1,200 a month. It was like this older guy was living there. He was very comfortable in his life. I think it was like a 2-bedroom. It was a beautiful old. It used to be one giant house, like this huge house. And back then, during World War II, they split it into two, right, upper and lower, right. A lot of these houses. This was in Norfolk, Virginia. When people came back from the war, this is what they did to really provide housing for all these people. That's how they did it, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, the guy on the lower level was paying, I think he was actually paying lower rent, like $850. I cranked him up to $1,250 or something like that, like overnight, and he paid it. And then this is where it screwed up though. The one upstairs was a 4-bedroom, and which was way too big for one individual to rent. So next thing you know, you're renting it out to students, and you're renting, and those students, probably 4 students, have to all get along. All their names have to be on the leases. Yeah. And it's like all that crap to deal with. And it's like, so you have this old man that lives on the first floor and 4 basically young people that are partying and drinking all night long upstairs. Oh, tell me about the formula for success on that one, right? Oh my God, stupid. I would never do that deal now, right? But it's like, I didn't know any better. Even though the guy, he seemed really hip and cool, but he didn't want to hear these people do whatever they do, 2:00 in the morning upstairs, he just didn't want to hear it. Besides that, finding the tenants was always a pain. If 3 people were upset with the 4th person, guess who hears about it? I hear about it. You know, it's like, I don't want to, I'm not your judge, guys. All four of you signed on the lease here. So it's like, they have to deal with that. It's a nightmare. And I was self-managing at the time too, right?
Mhm.
Which was another mistake. So I think it's because nowadays the way we buy things is very, very different, right? I still put permanent financing on my stuff. That rule's never changed, believe it or not. That's a rule I carried from 16 years ago. I still do that to this very day. But you're looking at the yield per unit. That's why it's like if someone shows me a very expensive home or duplex or whatever. It's if the rents are too high, 1,800, 1,900, 2,000 a month, I don't know about that unless it's in a very good area. Maybe, because here's the thing. It's like, I like the B and C stuff when it comes to that type of smaller asset, right? Or actually any asset for that matter, because when the economy I'm always thinking about the economy. I'm always on the defensive, right? If and when the economy turns, and it will turn, we're already having problems already as it is. The A-class people are usually the first ones to switch. They'll usually downgrade, right? And if they're paying you $2,000 a month in rent or $2,500 or whatever it is, guess what? Sayonara, I'm out. I'm going to go to this other guy here and pay 17 or 15 or 14, right?
Or they could buy their own place.
Yeah, or buy their own place. Yeah, exactly. Because they perceive that as being cheaper, and it's actually not when you consider taxes and maintenance and all the other stuff, insurance, all the other crap that comes with it. But if I would have known about multifamily back then, things would have been completely different, right? It's like when you have more units, you're spreading the risk. Right. The way I saw it was, well, one unit, if it goes vacant, it's zero. If I have two units, then it's like in one unit goes, well, at least I have the second unit to cover it. It's like, it's thinking like that. But it's like, if I got 4 units, the same rule applies. If you got 100 units, the same rule applies, right? I wasn't thinking like that. I was still thinking in terms of single family, that kind of stuff. And I think many people think that way because it's the first thing that they're exposed to, right? So we see it every day. For most people, that's where they live. They live in the single family space. So they're familiar with it. But it's that was the thing though. Buying a duplex is stupid, number one. But again, I didn't know. But number two, buying that duplex was stupid because I way overpaid for it. And like I said, the tenant base was terrible, and dealing with all the nonsense, the garbage that comes with it is terrible too. Yeah.
So you were working with the 200,000, 300, 400,000 range, and then all of a sudden you decided, hey, 2.0, I'm going to go millions.
Well, it wasn't all of a sudden. There's a big gap of time there.
Oh yeah, there's that gap. So what was that next property that marked the first property that propelled you to the multi-millions?
So I'll tell you what, man. It was so when I decided I was going to do syndication, okay, I was like, okay, well, I got to raise money from people. I got to learn how to raise money. I did not know anything about raising money. I mean, aside from what I learned in corporate, but when you're raising money for real estate, it's a little different. This is what's called, with making my little air quotes here, retail investors. And what that means is that these are people that are everyday retail, and they call them retail because they're everyday people, right? And you're asking them to invest 50, 100, 150, whatever it is, $1,000 in a potential deal, right? That's why they call it retail. It's not like, say, a big REIT or something like that where they're throwing down millions upon millions of dollars into your project. So at any rate, I felt like for my first deal, I had to own something. I had to own my own thing and do it on my own, which is what I mentioned before, right? I took all my cash and put it into this deal. And it's funny because I stole this deal, man. I stole it. And I don't mean stole it like in a bad way, like I manipulated someone or whatever. What happened was this person, this guy who owned the place, he knew nothing about real estate, like commercial real estate, right? So he hired a regular old, just a regular old agent, like a real estate agent, not a broker, an agent. And she puts it on the MLS, this 11 unit deal with the potential to be for a 12th unit. And I'm like, and I just happen to be looking on the MLS, right? And it's like, what the hell is this? And it looks like two houses, right? It looks like, but these so-called houses were enormous. They were huge, right? And then I look a little more closely, and people must have thought it was an error because they look like houses. I call the broker, or the agent rather, and she says, "Oh no, this is there are 11 units here." I go, "It was under $200,000 for 11 units." And I'm like, and it was 5 minutes down the street from where I was working, because I was consulting at this company in Akron. And I'm like, well, I got to go see this. So I walk this property, and I'm like, the rents are low, the area's not bad. I'm like, what's the catch? I'm thinking to myself, right? I'm like, I'll take it. Full price offer, done.
20 grand a unit.
Yeah, 20 grand, and I just sold it for almost 40. And and I bought that 3.5 years ago, or 3 years ago, something like that. Yeah, crazy, man. And so I made all that cash flow in the meantime, and I doubled my money. I doubled it, not even double my money. I more than doubled my money. I doubled the how much I paid for it. It was ridiculous, man.
Wow.
So, but that wasn't the scary one. The scary one is this one. This is the scary story. So, I decided that, one thing I learned in this business is that you have to practice underwriting. Underwriting deals, to know that you have a deal, is the most important thing, because the last thing you'll ever want to do, if you guys are out there and you guys are looking for deals, trying to find deals right now is extremely difficult. So your ability to underwrite deals and know the story behind the deal is critical. So what do? You go to LoopNet, okay? You go to LoopNet, not to buy anything. You go to LoopNet to practice your numbers. That's what I call it, practicing your numbers. You download different financials, you download the P&Ls, you look at it, you get familiar with what does it look like, what's wrong with it, what's right with it, what do you like about it, what do you dislike about it. There's different versions of P&Ls that you might catch, right? Maybe you download financials from like 5 different properties, you put them all side by side, they look very, very different. Get familiar and get comfortable with the different types of numbers you're going to be looking at. That's part of this exercise, is that you have to know how to read that stuff, right? So that's what I was doing. I was practicing my numbers. So on that deal, that small deal that I just bought, had a property manager on it, and I think he happened to call me about something, and I happened to have a deal up on my screen. This consulting job. At the time, I wasn't consulting, I was analyzing numbers, and I had the deal up on the screen, right? And with this guy's picture on it in LoopNet, right? It's like he's also a broker, right? Most property managers in the majority of states, they have to be brokers in order to be property managers. And I asked him about this deal. I go, hey, this deal has been on the market here for like, I don't know, a very long time. Like, what's going on with it? He says, it just fell out of contract right now. And I said, well, what's the bottom line number? Like, what are they like? It was listed at 1.6 million. He says 1.4 million, right? 250,000. I'm like, send me a purchase agreement. I'll sign it right now. I swear to God, that's what I did. I did not even look at the property. I signed a PSA on site. Right there, unseen, sight unseen, sign a PSA. Not recommended. I don't recommend people do this. Don't ever do that. Don't do this. I did it. And then I'm like, then I sign it, I hang up the phone, I send my earnest money, and then I'm like, oh my God, I got to raise the money for this thing. I had no leads for the money. Again, don't do this. Always have an idea as to where you're going to get your money. Like, have some idea. Like, I plan on targeting a $2 million deal. That means I probably need to be able to get my hands on about $800,000. Okay, I probably need to talk to X number of people. Yada yada. I never did any of that. Never did any of that. But what I did do was I spoke to a handful of people out of Seattle, out of California, whatever, and they expressed some interest in real estate, and they were syndicators, just like I was starting to be. I had the deal under contract. And what do? I pick up the phone and I call one lady, And I said, hey, I have this deal. Would you be interested in partnering up with it? No. And then she hangs up. Wow, whoa, okay. You know, so that was a dead end. I called the second lady, another friend. I didn't know her that well, right? So I call her up. I tell her about the deal, tell her about the returns, tell her like a picture, and she's like, I'm in. You know, great. So we raised, you know how long it took to raise the money for that deal? We had to raise about $600,000. You know how long it took to raise the money for that deal?
I'm going to guess hours.
22 hours.
Wow.
It took 22 hours.
Here
I am, I was freaking out.
you slept 2 hours.
Yeah. It was crazy, man. It was 22 hours to raise the money for that deal. It was nuts. And yeah, I mean, that was the first deal to really get like, there's a, you know, basically a $1.5 million deal. Yeah. It's like, now I won't even look at those deals anymore because they're too small, which is hilarious, right? When you think about it. But it's kind of like expanding that mindset, you know, not thinking in terms of scarcity. It's easy to say when you've done it a bunch of times now. Like I've done it a lot of times at this point. I've done a lot of deals now. It's hard. For someone starting out, it's tough. I know it's tough, right? And this market is not making it easier, meaning it's just deal flow is tough to find right now. You know, there's a lot of competitive money out there. As a matter of fact, I was talking to a guy from a lender, right? And we were talking about life insurance companies that place money, or they invest in deals now too. So they're competing with Fannie and Freddie, and they're matching the same terms. They're requiring more money down, but the point is that this is cheap money that's getting into these smaller deals, like $10 million deals. Now, previously, 5 years ago, a life insurance company wouldn't even touch a $10 million deal. Like that's too small, right? Now they're doing them all day long. What does that tell you? It tells you that the competition is tight, very, very tight. So what I recommend to people these days are different things, depends on the person, is that if you're really itching to get started, fine, get into the single family space. Make sure you get good management. Make sure you buy enough of them and you buy them fast, because the only way single family works is with scale. If you only have 2-3 units, whatever, it only takes one mishap and you're dead, right? You're done.
Yep.
Right. If you have one single family, 2 single families, and you get a sewer line that breaks or whatever, it's $7,000, $8,000, $10,000. I don't know. It depends on where you are, right?
Yep.
You better be ready to absorb that, and you're not going to see any profit out of that deal for probably about a year. Are you ready to do that? You know, if you have like 100 of these things, it's not as much. It's the same thing when it comes to scale. That's when it comes to single family. When it comes to multifamily, what I recommend to my students is, you know, go ahead and get that 22 unit, the 28 unit, the 30 unit, whatever. You get in, make sure you inspect the hell out of it. You get in, you get out fast. A year and a half, put in some value. Value could be even installing good property management. That's value there, you know. You build value and you get in, you get out, because you need to limit your exposure to that deal, right? But what you're trying to do is build a resume. That's what you're doing. You're building a resume. You get in, you get out. You get in, you get out. You do a bunch of those little deals, and eventually the brokers will start sending you big deals. That's the thing. I mean, the brokers are the key masters. They have the deals. And if you think that you're just going to call somebody and call an owner and they're going to just hand you a 200 unit deal because they like you, no, they will not do that. You know, I get wholesalers all the time. They'll reach out to me. Hey, I got a 200 unit deal in your neck of the woods. Really? Is that right? So instead of dealing with Colliers or with CBRE or a big national brokerage house, they're going to give it to Joe, the wholesaler. No, they will not do that. That doesn't happen. I guess it could happen, but typically you're not buying from people like that. You know, I wouldn't buy from someone like that. I'd rather deal with a reputable broker. You know. So anyway, I might have digressed on that answer. I don't know.
No, that's good. Like for people who are starting out, and you kind of alluded to it before, do you still recommend starting off with the 1 or 2 single family and then work your way up to a multi, or jump right into a multi? Or is that kind of depending on how much backing you have, depending on how much finances you have, what's the strategy there?
That's a good question. I recommend going right, if it's possible, to go right to the big deal. You don't have to do the small stuff. People, I don't know where it came from that, so you have to work your way up. You got to crawl before you walk. It's a bunch of crap. It's nonsense. If you can get to the big deals, then do it. The hard part is it takes imagination to do it, and it takes some sophistication to do it, right? This is where like these two things are hard for people that was just starting out, because they have a very hard time getting their head around a $12 million deal, right? I did. I'll admit it. I did. You know, I had a hard time at first. You know, it's like, oh my God, $12 million. I can't believe that. And who's to think, like 3 weeks ago, man, listen, 3 weeks ago, I signed a construction loan for $70 million for the Rockefeller. Wow. 70 million. My name on it. Here we go. Let's go. Let's roll. Let's do this deal, right? But here's the thing, okay? Every person listening has a superpower. And what I mean by that, when it comes to real estate, right? Some people are great underwriters. Some people, maybe they're not so good at underwriting, but they're really good at finding deals. They have the relationships. They're social people. They love talking to people, right? Maybe it's someone that knows how to operate deals. So they bring, like they know how to operate. They like nobody's business. They can get that property humming. They know all the rules. They know that once they get it to 98%, it's time to raise the rents. They know all this stuff. It's all built in. You know, they don't need someone to tell them all that, because they're masters at running properties. Maybe they're great at getting the financing lined up. Maybe they're great capital raisers. The point is that any single person listening right now does not have to be a master at all these things. Mm-hmm. Even if they master, like, and I say master, like they got to know the subject inside and out. One thing, let's say, for instance, you suck at running properties, but you know what though? You have access to money because maybe you live in New York City or you live in New Jersey or whatever, and you live there, and you know about underwriting. You know a good deal when you see one, and you know how to get your hands on millions of dollars of cash because maybe you have friends, family. You know how to talk. You know how to sell. You know how to make a presentation. That's valuable. That's valuable to syndicators, mm-hmm. right? So it's like now. Maybe someone might call me and they say, hey, listen, you know what, Agostino, listen, I know you find deals. I would love to GP with you on deals. I can bring money to the table. And then it's up to me whether I believe that person or not. Mm-hmm. So they have to be able to sell me that they can execute. Yeah. Right? They have to that's hard to do, not just with me, but with anybody. You know, you have to know that they can deliver. Can they deliver, right? But the point is that person is polished and they know how to do it. They know how to underwrite that deal. So that way, let's say, for instance, I do send them a deal. Okay, well, let's do this deal. And maybe that person might say, man, I don't know about this deal, and here's why. And then maybe there's a back and forth, and I can explain, oh, yeah, here's why the deal works, right? And it's okay if they're not masters at underwriting, but they are masters at raising money. The point is that you don't have to be everything. And that's a big myth right there, because I think that many of the gurus out there are trying to convince people that they have to know it all. Now, I had to learn it all because I had no choice and I didn't know any better. Mm-hmm. So I had to learn everything, and I was okay with it because I was always, like, when I was in school, I was a nerd. I'd love to study stuff anyway. So for me, it's like I enjoy doing it. But I found it's not necessary. Mm-hmm. You know, there's many people out there. I've interviewed them on our show as well. Some of them are straight up capital raisers. Some of them are straight up operators. All they do is operate. Mm-hmm. Some of them, all they do is run the project. All they do is get the financing. It's like they do one thing, and it's okay, because this is a teamwork business. It's not one single person. Mm-hmm. Like even Grant Cardone, who people might know who he is, he doesn't do it by himself. He's the front man. He's up on stage all the time talking about his properties, yada, 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 but he's got a whole team behind him, right? Other people are helping him raise money. He's not doing it by himself. I mean, he's doing the bulk of it, of course, but no one person is doing it all by themselves. It's all teamwork, right? So and that's my point. You know, it's like, get really, really good at doing one thing extremely well. That's probably the best advice I can give to someone starting out.
Now, for yourself, you're working with a lot of people now, helping them become successful in real estate. Was there somebody that you were able to bounce your ideas off of during that period of time of transition?
You know, so back then, let's go back a ways. I did not know that other people were syndicating deals. Like all the stuff you see right now on Facebook, all these social media guys that are selling all their stuff, it didn't exist back then. Or maybe, and if it did, I didn't know about it because I wasn't really big on social. You know, I didn't really do that. I wasn't Facebooking all the time like some people do. So it was outside of my purview. I had no idea. So I ended up learning from like Robert Kiyosaki and Sam Zell, like about how to think strategically, how to put deals together. Once I learned everything I could from those two guys, then I would learn from like other books. Actually, one thing I studied was Carlton Sheets, believe it or not. And for many people, I mean, you probably even know who Carlton Sheets was. This guy was an old dude from the 70s. Yep. All right. And he used to show people how to like buy houses using creative financing, like all these wacky ways of getting deals done, you know, subject to wraparound mortgages, all kinds of like, you know, lease options, all these weird type of scenarios. I still use that stuff even today. I have deals I've done using those strategies. I was studying everything to get my hands on. Single family, multifamily, I was studying it all. Anything I can get my hands on at the time, right? But I didn't have any single like person, because I remember I made the move. Well, started learning all this stuff in Virginia. Once I moved here to Cleveland, I just started learning. I started talking to people, right? And I just tried to figure out what the best numbers were. And then at that point, I think it was later on, I started listening to several podcasts and learning a little bit about what sort of return targets people are generally looking for, what type of asset classes they're looking for, what do investors like, what they dislike. And then once I learned all that, then when I got to learning underwriting, I'm like, okay, let me see if I can pencil this out. And I learned all that. I mean, I seriously learned the whole thing on my own. Very, very painful, very expensive, because I made mistakes. All right. My earlier deals are not home runs, but fortunately I used my own money for that. So most of them were home runs. Like now they're all home runs because I learned. And I would almost say that, and a home run means that I didn't lose money, right? But I didn't really get money either, right? And those are all with my own.
Yeah.
You almost want to partner with someone like that who's been through the mistakes, right? You don't want to have somebody that says, I never made one single mistake ever. Oh, really? If you're Mr. Perfect, I see. Yeah. Is that what you are? No such thing. No such thing. Right. Everyone makes mistakes. And if they don't, they're lying, because we're all human. Yeah. Right. So, but yeah, I learned on my own, man. But the thing is though, nowadays you don't have to. I think the biggest thing is finding the right mentor that's going to be straight up and honest with you. And those are the ones that are a little bit tougher to come by, you know, because everybody on social media has an agenda, right? And they're going to try to convince you that, yes, I have a house on the French Riviera, and I drive to buy my croissants in my Ferrari, and I own 4 duplexes. There's guys like this, by the way. It's stupid, right? And there's people like that, and what's even more stupid is that people believe them. You know, it's not possible. Yeah, you're not going to have 4 duplexes and be financially free. You know, right. And if that were the case, and I had a discussion with somebody this past weekend about it. You know, they were afraid to buy, or they're afraid to get into too big a deal because they didn't want to be perceived as greedy. I don't know where this comes from. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm like, you know, I think you're being selfish, is what I told this person. You're being selfish by not doing it. And they're confused. And it's like, well, why is that? I go, because if you know you can make that much money, why don't you just make all that money and then give it away? Just give it all away.
That's true.
Well, what's the harm in that, right? Okay, fine. You go ahead and be greedy and then give it all away. The real reason is because they're scared. Like many people out there right now, I'm sure that they want financial freedom. Maybe some people like their jobs. Some people say they like their jobs. They really don't. Some people hate their jobs. There is a way out. It's through entrepreneurship. I think the hardest part, though, is, are they willing to take the leap? That's the toughest part, man.
Right.
You know.
Now, you have your own syndication, and when it comes for people looking to get into those groups or to invest with you, what would you say is the general questions somebody needs to ask in order for them to know, okay, this is the right group to invest with?
Sure. Well, you almost want to know, like, have they made any mistakes? And, and it's like, everyone makes mistakes, like I said before. Fortunately, like I said, were those mistakes limited to anything? And they were limited to very, very small deals. And I didn't lose anybody else's money. It was all my own money, right? It's important that you have some wounds. Here, I'll give you an example. Let's say, for instance, you're in a dark alley and you're about to be attacked by somebody. Would you want to get into a fight with someone who's big and burly? Would you want to get behind the guy who's big and burly, who has a scar across his face? Or would you want to get behind the skinny guy who's never been in a fight before in his life? Who would you want to get into a fight with? You want to get behind the guy who's been through a bunch of fights and seen some stuff. That's why, because chances are he'll protect you. The other guy who's never done it before, fresh face and shiny clean, is probably going to die. Right? You want to be behind that guy. You want to be behind the guy who can fight. It's kind of like that analogy, right? Mm-hmm. So I would say that. I would say you have to try to assess if the deal lines up to what the investor's vision is too. Because here's the thing: we have several different options for investors, right? We have a coupon, so I do like single tenant, triple net. Single tenant, triple net, think of like your Walgreens, your CVS, your Dollar General, Dollar Tree, stuff like that, right? Not extremely sexy, but you know what? It produces good, solid returns, not as much as multifamily, good, solid returns. They're monthly returns, and there's a corporate guarantee behind those leases, right? So what that means is that because there's a corporate guarantee, if something happened to Dollar General and they went out of business, which is unlikely, right? Yep. But let's say they did, the leases are paid first before the shareholders are. Okay, that's some strong backing, right? But you know what? Though the returns are not going to be as strong as, like, say, in a multifamily, right? But they're consistent. Okay, they're monthly returns. Okay, on a multifamily, someone's looking for those big pops. Boom, the big refi comes in, and we're gonna spend all this money renovating, and we're gonna fix it up. We're gonna crank up the rents. We're gonna wait 18 months and do a refi, and then wash, rinse, repeat. Some quarters you're gonna get money. Some quarters you may get less money. Some quarters you may get more money, but you'll get money. Not as predictable. That's a different type of investor, right? We also do ground up development. Again, with ground up development or development in general, like the Rockefeller, for instance, you put down that money, you're not going to see a return for a little bit. It's going to take a good, I think 2 years before you see a return. It's going to be a big, juicy return, but you have to be patient, right? Those are 3 different investors right there, right? And that's why we offer a variety of different vehicles for that one person to choose which way they want to go, right? It's important to have that. Well, it's important for me to have that, because some investors, if they're later on in life and they just want a coupon, you know what? Single tenant, triple net's for you. And if they say, but I want to get into multifamily, I heard that's the place to be. And if they're 80 and they're living on a fixed income, I'd say, well, I probably wouldn't take their money, first of all. But secondly, though, if they did have the cash for it and all they need is that monthly return just coming in, I would probably say, well, we can do that, but then I would also strongly recommend looking at this single tenant, triple net, because that is monthly return that just shows up it gets ACH every month. Yeah. Very, very, very predictable. Very predictable, right? Depends on what the person wants. So the alignment of the vision with the syndicator is super, super, super important. You have to be able to line up that vision, and then of course, one other thing too is that for a limited partner, they are partners, but if that person is going to be like nervous all the time, oh my God, what's going on with the deal? Oh, I heard that there's a storm in Cleveland. Is the property okay? Oh my God, I'm freaking out. That kind of thing. It's probably not for you. You're probably better off investing on your own, doing your own deals. because you have to be willing. You have to be willing to like relinquish control of the deal to the experienced person who's keeping an eye on it, right?
Well, also not for you either, because
Yeah,
you want to deal with those kind of phone calls all the time.
exactly. There's that too, there's that too. So it's kind of like, yeah, it goes both ways, right? I mean, we interview them and they interview us, and we have to like each other. And if they don't like each other, it's okay. It's fine. No harm done. It's cool, But I think you're going to find most syndicators are like, they don't want to deal with stuff like that. I think most of them don't. Or if they're going to be really, really negative or whatever about a certain thing, it's like, no, just you go do something else. You don't need to be investing in this deal, or you don't need to be investing in this area, whatever. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that stuff that takes place too, and also the asset class too. When it comes to multifamily, there's many different asset classes. Maybe that person doesn't want to invest in like C-class assets. Maybe D-class assets scare the hell out of them. I mean, I personally don't do D-class because I don't like it. C-class is probably where, like, I prefer B, but there's a lot of C stuff here in Cleveland. It's not for everybody. Some people just they expect to have a lower return on an A-class asset, and they're okay with it, and that's okay too. That's fine. That's fine. It just depends on the deal.
Yep. Well, obviously, this interview has gone by very, very fast, and I could sit here and ask you so many more questions about real estate. I'm sure you have lots of stories about the worst tenant you've ever dealt with, or the most surprising deal you've dealt with. That's probably, we'll save that for another time.
Yeah.
If I ask you, what's the best advice, whether it's for life, for investments, for business, whatever it is that you want to share? You had the world stage, and you can share whichever message you want to share. What would that message be?
Well, I'm not going to turn this into a religious thing, but I'm going to, dealing with what we as humans know right now, okay, universally anyway, we're going once around the ride, only once. Mm-hmm. We got to make the most of it. So what does that mean? That means taking action. Don't waste time doing crap you don't want to do. You get one life. Maybe there's an afterlife. Maybe there isn't. I don't know, right? No one's gone and come back and told us all about it. It never happened, right? All I know is that when you live your life with purpose and you're living that life, the best life you can possibly live, then that's how you find fulfillment. But if you're listening to this message right now, you're listening to this discussion, and you're thinking to yourself, yeah, you know what, I'm perfectly happy where I am, then maybe you're fine. But if the answer is I'm not happy, why am I doing this? I'd rather be in Italy right now. I'd rather be somewhere else right now. Then you're not living your best life, because there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do that. That's the thing, and that's one exercise that I make my students do is that when they're writing out their affirmations, there's 24 affirmations about their life, how to see their life vision. If you had unlimited money, unlimited everything in your life, there's no barriers, what would your life look like? Mm-hmm. I'm sure it would not be hanging out at Starbucks every day, or hanging out at the bar every single day, drinking beers, or wasting time, doing that, talking to bar flies all day long. I'm sure that would not be it, but that's what people are doing every day. They're working at jobs that suck, and it's a total waste of time. Don't waste time. Take action now, because you'll be surprised how fast 50 comes, 60 comes, 70 comes, 80, and then you're done. Mm-hmm. You'll be surprised how fast that happens.
Very, very true. Good and very, very powerful words. That's a good mic drop right there.
Well, good. Thank you.
Before I let you go, 5 quick questions. Let me know the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Number 1, if you were stuck in a car on a road trip, what is that one song you don't mind listening to over and over and over and over again?
Oh my God. I would say, I guess it depends on what mood I'm in, but it would probably be something by Def Leppard. Like, like pour some sugar on me or something.
Very nice. Yeah, you get to choose 3 people to join you on this road trip. It could be fictional characters. It could be real life characters. It could be real successful people.
Yeah.
Which 3 people would you like on this trip?
Oh, wow. Sam Zell, Albert Einstein, and probably Elon Musk.
Now, before you go on this trip, you have to prepare some kind of snack or food for these guys on your trip because they're going to get hungry. So what is that expertise meal or snack that you could create?
That I would create? I would actually make the snack?
Yes.
Right? I got to make it, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I can make pizza. I can make pizza, and pizza is a good snack to eat in a car, I suppose, right? It's very portable, right? So it'd probably be pizza.
Awesome. If you were in the Olympics, and Olympics is on right now, which sport would you like to win the gold medal in?
It would probably be some sort of like power snatch or something like that, like weightlifting stuff.
Wow. Do you lift?
Yeah, CrossFit. Yeah.
And my last question is, what is success like? But give me a number between 1 and 2.
What is success like? Is that what you said?
Yeah. And then give me a number between 1 and 2.
1 and 2?
Yeah.
Well, I would say
give me a number.
Nothing tastes better than success. So yeah. I guess whatever the maximum is. So I guess 2.
Okay. 1, 2. I have the word camouflage here. So how do you relate success to camouflage?
How do I relate success to camouflage?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. How do you relate success to camouflage? In order to become successful, you have to be a chameleon. Okay. And what that means is you have to be able to adjust and calibrate to your audience. If they're going to be aggressive, you have to be prepared to handle that and deliver a message that's going to get through to them to take action, to invest with you or to help you with your deal. If they're not aggressive, if they're a very slow practical person, again, you have to adjust. You have to calibrate to doing that as well, right? If they are a social person, you must be able to apply a social way to get them to again believe that you are that social person and become their friend to invest with you. So it all depends, right? But what's important is that you have to become the chameleon. You have to be able to calibrate your personality, your speaking, your tone, all of it to match with that audience. You are not the most important person in the room. Your audience is, always.
Nicely said, and that's how success is like how success is like camouflaging. Well, thank you very much for your time, your stories, and all your great knowledge and wisdom here. Any last words, and what's the best way to reach out to you? I know you have a podcast and you have courses, you help people. What's the best way?
BulletproofCashflow.com is the best way. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn. We got the website, of course. Feel free to reach out. Always happy to hear from people.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much again. He is Agostino. My name is Fong. Until next time, today is the day to unlock your peak potential. We'll see you later.